everyone, and welcome to the podcast series for the Rising Relentlessly book series. Today, I have the honor to introduce to you the editors of this amazing book, Ashley Elizabeth Packard and James Bryant. So excited to have you both on at the same time, which is a very rare thing. And I also had the honor of having them be the editors for my book, Expiration Date Unknown. So this is a huge honor for me and welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
All right. Well, let's dive into some really just thought-provoking questions that a lot of people are curious about. First and foremost, why did you get into editing books for Wildly Free? Ashley Elizabeth, would you like to go first?
I would be happy to go first. I editing for Wildly Free was the it was a divine appointment, I swear. It was something that happened incredibly organically. I had the honor to be in our very first anthology, Rooted to Rise, which ended up being a #1 bestseller, which is super exciting. But on that journey, I realized I had kind of a pull on my heart to write the poem that's in the introduction of that book. And I remember going, and I don't even think I was supposed to, but I went and read all the other chapters from the other people in advance. Mine was already done, but I went and read the chapters, and I was so convicted by what I read, and I was so moved by so much of what they had going. And as somebody who has been teaching for 17 years and sitting in editing spaces and doing all those different kinds of things, I felt like I was able to see things in these chapters that had been written. And to be honest with you, I was jealous. I was jealous of James because he was like the main editor in that first book. And I was like, James, is if there's space and you'd like a little bit of help or you want another voice in this, I would love to be a part of that. And I'm lucky enough that he said yes to that. And we got to have one of our first collaborations in terms of editing in that space. And it was so smooth and it was so effortless. And there was so much alignment. But we also realized that we bring very different things to the table in that space. And there was a lot of strength there. So when you guys turned around and you were like, hey, would you like to edit more in the future? It's one of the easiest yeses I've ever had.
I love that.
So
What about you, James?
So for me, my editing journey began when I was at a random business networking meeting, and a another business owner mentioned that she was thinking about writing a book. And out of the blue, I was like, "Hey, I can edit that and publish it." And though I've not edited and published that book for her, it made me realize that there's so many people out there that have a story to be told. They have a voice that needs to be heard, and they don't know how to get started, or they don't know how to continue, or they don't know how to polish it and get it really to where they want it to be, or they're able to find an editor that can do amazing things, but it ends up not sounding like them. It ends up sounding like someone else. It ends up sounding maybe a little bit too polished. And I really realized where I was called was to help authors have their genuine, authentic voices heard. Whether it was with you, Rachelle, whether it was with you, Ashley Elizabeth, and the other authors in our anthologies, but to connect with their stories and to help them dig deeper and to help them really get to the heart of their message. And so far, I have worked with so very many women authors, which I absolutely love. And I hear from them that, does a man connect with my story? Can a man connect with my story? And I come in with them to them as the editor and go, yes, as your editor and as your reader, I can hear you and feel you and connect to what it is that you're trying to say. And that is such an incredible privilege. I've read over 5,000 books in my life, but to sit on this side of it and to be the editor for it and to know the process that authors go through to have their story told and their voices heard, it is very empowering for me. and it is amazing that I get to empower them as well.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I know from personal experience, writing my first book outside of an anthology, my first memoir, the experience with the two of you was like no other on so many levels. And one of the things that I love to spotlight about the both of you when I'm talking to people that are wanting to write with us is that you get a male perspective, you get a female perspective, and you also get two different generations. And I think that that's really kind of a unique approach to it. You know, it's all those different life experiences, being able to see the world differently, your perceptions of things are different. And I would say that doing the editing process with the two of you for my book was intense because of those different perspectives. You know, when we're writing books and we're sharing our stories, we're in our head and in our heart. And then when we're vulnerable and we share it with the editors, it's an experience. And it really kind of takes the person to a totally different level of their writing. And I would say that that was one of the best gifts that I got to receive through the editing process with the two of you. So, with that, let's dig into the actual editing process itself. How do you help writers find clarity in what they're really trying to say? James, do you want to go first on this one?
I'd love to start with that one. So, first of all, as a writer, as an author, remember you're not just writing for yourself, right? That if that is a big part of it, and please write for yourself too. But as you're thinking about your chapter, as you're thinking about your book, as you're thinking about whatever you're working on, think about what is the message you want your readers to walk away with? Or what is the action that you want them to do? Or how do you want them to feel? Start there. Start with defining those three things. And also, and I forgot to add, also think about who is your audience? Who are you writing to? Are you writing to yourself? Are you writing to your family? Are you writing to your generation? Are you writing to other authors? Think about who your audience is, because that's going to help tailor your message. And once you've identified those things, to your audiences, what is the message that you want them to walk away with? What do you want them to do, or how do you want them to feel? Once you know those things and you start looking at your chapter and you start writing, when you get to the editing process, it becomes so much easier to really narrow down and determine, am I saying the right thing? Where do it, and not right as in right or wrong, that's not what I'm saying, but is my message clear? Is what I'm trying to convey clear, not only to the editor, but also to your readers? And when you work with us, we spend time and we ask you questions and we dig deep and we offer suggestions that are completely up to you. They're completely optional, whether you take them or whether you act on them. But it's always coming back to that central message. What is it that you want for your reader? And the best chapters, the best authors that Ashley, Elizabeth, and I have worked with have had that clear understanding, either going into it or through our editing process, they've been able to identify with it and identify it. Ashley, what would you say?
Well, I would piggyback on everything that you said. I think a lot of times when people are struggling to find their clarity or to narrow down what their message is, I think they find that clarity in conversation with us. And I think that's something that makes us really unique in this space is that we make time for those conversations. So yes, we get in, we leave comments, we leave feedback, we ask questions, we make small editing, choices for you. But when it comes down to what we're really trying to do, we really focus on making sure that we are amplifying an author's voice. And in order to do that, that means that as editors, we have to sit in live conversation with you so that we can hear your voice. And then as they're articulating, well, this is really what I want to do. James, when you're asking me this question, this is really what I want to say. Gosh, these are the people who are on my heart. That's where so much clarity comes from. It's that the two things are always inextricably linked, right? If I can communicate it and I can talk about it with somebody, I'm better off writing about it. And the more I write about it, the more clarity I have when I speak about it. Right. So we pair those two things together all the time so that we can help people identify and sit in and embrace that clarity that they get the more that they work with us.
And I think about an author we worked with recently
Mm,
where this author wrote two different versions of their chapter. And one was very head centered and one was very heart centered. And through conversation with them, I was like, what is it? What is it you're trying to accomplish? What is it you're trying to do with your chapter? Is it you want someone thinking, or is it that you want someone feeling? And
mm,
the response was very clear. They wanted someone feeling. So it helped to steer which direction they were going to go with their chapter, which one they were going to choose to run with. And it was such a much more powerful experience, both for the author and the reader, because of that conversation.
I love that. Yeah. And that just what one of the reasons that makes you two so unique and special with that tagging from the clarity. Is there a common mistake or decision that writers make over and over in their writing? And how do you guide them from that?
So Ashley and I talked beforehand, and I decided to lead with this answer because this is something we so often see is that an author tries to give everything, not just the kitchen sink, but the kitchen table, the dining table, the fixtures, the pots, the pans, the plates, the kitchen, the cups. They literally try to put everything into their chapter. And this is or into their book. And this is one of those things where and I commonly see it is someone thinks that more words the better,
mm,
or as my son is he's in college, I'm working with him and helping him with his college essays. He says filler. Oh, I need to provide filler. It's like, no, you don't need to provide filler. You don't have to give everything. If it detracts from, again, it goes back to your message and what it is you're wanting the reader to experience. If it's detracting from the experience for your reader, then it's not information that necessarily needs to be there. A 6,000 word chapter, a 60,000 word book is not necessarily better than a 1,500 word chapter or a 15,000 word book. It all comes down to, does your message come through? Is it clear? And you don't have to have too much in order to get there.
Mhm.
Would you add?
my biggest thing is I feel like when there are so many authors, they have so many ideas. They're bursting at the seams. They have so much, and I mean to James's point, there's so much in their mind and on their heart that they want to communicate that the authors that he is talking about, they open the floodgates and they let it all out. And we mean all of it. On the flip side, I think there are so many people when we put pen to paper, or even if it's typing on a keyboard, right? There is something that can be feel very permanent about putting our words down on paper. And one of the mistakes that I feel like I see authors make a lot is they're just resistance to putting it on paper, right?
Mm.
Their resistance to actually writing the things because up here, there's memes about it everywhere. We'll have to post one with this podcast, but it's about like when it's up here, it's like this land of sunshine and unicorn and rainbows. It's so good, and I know exactly what I'm gonna do. And then I type the first sentence, and it's like, did a caveman just type that? Like, what just happened? Because getting from here to there, and I think that our perfectionism, and I'm gonna say our because when I'm sitting in an author space, that's something that I can battle, right? But if it stays up here, your editing team can't do anything with it, and it's never going to make it to your audience that needs your story, right? If we stay cerebral about it, if we stay stuck up here, it's a mistake because what we have to do is at some point we have to let go and we have to let things pour onto the page, knowing that there are processes and things in place like having an editing team, right? That can come in and they can help you make sense and they can help you clarify and they can help you reorganize those things. But I feel like, James, you always say this, it's like we can't do anything with a blank page, right? So a mistake would be just sitting inside kind of that perfectionistic space or this idea where everything up here really looks beautiful, but when I put it down, it doesn't seem as idyllic as what it did up here. And so I think finding that balance between the two, where you like letting things out. And honestly, I think both of us would recommend even like that it's better to go with floodgates and then back up. Like we can then take a litmus test, do it and say, this fits my message, this doesn't fit my message, or I need this here, or I don't right now. Easier than we can trying to draw it out and getting it on the page.
And,
Exactly.
and I always tell authors, it's like very, very, very first step. Whatever is here, get to here. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
is in your head, get to paper, whether it's on your computer, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
journal, whether it's a legal pad, whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be, you got to get it from your brain onto paper so that we
Mm-hmm.
can start to work with you, so that you can start to work with yourself, and also so that you can start to work with others as well. Recommending to authors earlier today, have someone else read your chapter out loud. I always tell them, read your own chapter out loud, but also have someone else read it out loud to you.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's where the magic starts to happen, is when you're no longer just hearing the voice in your head, but you're seeing your voice on paper.
Love that. I'm gonna ask the question, but then I'm gonna go first on this one real quick, just
Mm-hmm.
from personal experience. How do you balance honoring the author's voice while making the writing stronger? So I just feel like it's super necessary, again, to speak from personal experience. One of the most unique things the two of you do, and I've worked with a bunch of other editors, so I can say, that my experience with you is just far beyond anything I've ever experienced. You all read it and then you ask these thought-provoking questions, but at no point did I personally ever feel as though you were trying to get into my story. And what I've seen other editors do is try to get into people's stories, people's voices, people's train of thought. What you're doing is almost like having a conversation with my story, having a conversation with me through, the little side comments and what have you. So I can say from personal experience in terms of honoring the author's voice, I would love for you guys to kind of dig into why, like, did it become just your organic way of doing it? Because I've never experienced it with another editor before. And like, how did that come about? Because it truly does honor and make, like, from personal experience, that made me feel seen, too
Mhm.
seen in some ways. But that was okay because I needed to go through that. But how did that come about? Was that just organically, like the thing that you guys did, or did you talk about it, or how did that come about?
Well, I know that just speaking from, that first experience I told you about when James and I got to sit together and edit together for the first time, it is very organic. It's also one of the reasons that he and I cannot line item our services because we don't know. I don't know if I should say it like that, but really, I don't know how to separate what I'm doing as an editor from what I'm doing in terms of a writing coach that is amplifying your voice. And honestly, I don't know that I want to know the difference for me when I'm sitting inside someone's piece because for as long as I've been a teacher, which I mentioned that I've been teaching writing for a lot of years, I feel like one of the main things that I'm always trying to teach is the value of your voice, right? And that you are the only one who can tell your story in the unique way that you're going to tell your story. And what's beautiful about Wildly Free in particular is that we are not in competition with anybody else. And we're not going to position our authors to be in competition with anybody else. And so we are not in a position where we are strengthening writing to make you competitive. We are in a position where when we're strengthening your writing, we're strengthening your voice. And so you cannot separate the two. It's impossible to honor an author and also strip them of the very thing that makes them unique. And so when we sat down and we were doing it for the first time, when I was watching the comments that he was dropping, when he was listening, and I don't want to speak for you, James, but when he was listening to things that I was saying, we were very much both in that space. And I can also say that even some of the hardest pieces that we have edited together, where there was a really clear opportunity to strengthen the writing, we were both still so impacted by by the content of the writing, that we were able to sit in the space and honor their voice and strengthen the writing to the point where it was going to land effectively for an audience.
Feeling a little emotional at the moment. I just realized I think we need to change our job titles, Ashley. We're not editors, we're amplifiers. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so do we edit? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do we check your spelling? Do we check your grammar? Do we make sure your punctuation's correct? Do we have the drama dash or do we have the nice calm comma? You know, whatever. And Ashley, you could share your story about the M dash, but it's like the yes, we do that. That we're editors. That is part of what we do. But an author's story is their story. It is not my story. It is not Ashley Elizabeth's story. It's not Rachelle's story. It is not someone else's story. It is their story that needs to be amplified. And during the editing process, we help to strengthen it. That's what an amplifier does. It strengthens, it gets the voice out there so it can be heard by the audience, right? Um, but we aren't going to change it. We're not going to modulate it. We're not going to add sound effects. We are going to make sure that it is clear and that it is distinct and that it is yours. It is the author's voice. Because I've seen and read stories of authors whose voices were completely changed by their editor and their editing process. That is not what we do, and that is not what we are here for. And part of our process, part of the calls that we have with our authors, because we don't just simply add comments, we don't just simply change little things here and there, which we will do, but
Mm-hmm.
we sit down and we have conversations with the authors that we work with, and we ask questions and we add comments and we praise what's really there, and we're like, wow, whoa, oh my gosh. I mean, those are in there too, because we firmly believe that you need to know, as an author, the authors need to know when it really resonates with us and why it resonates. And then we're also going to go in and we're going to ask questions, or we're going to suggest that something gets reworded, or we're going to suggest moving something for clarity. Again, not changing the voice, not changing the story, but making it more clear, because we don't want the reader to get bogged down, right? And not understand and not be able to get to the message that the author is trying to convey. And but every single change, every single question, everything, every single dig deeper that we suggest is just that. It's a suggestion. If I remember working with another author on a topic where the dialogue didn't have any contractions.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying aren't, she was writing are not. Instead of saying didn't, she was writing did not. And it didn't feel natural to me as the editor. And I had a conversation with the author and I said, why, may I suggest that you add contractions here? And she had a very clear reason why she didn't use contractions, because she was modeling this off of one of her granddaughters. And her granddaughter did not speak using contractions. And so there was a very clear, distinct reason. So even though as an editor, it didn't sound right from her perspective and the author's perspective, what she was trying to convey, it was very clear why she had made the choices that she did. And as your amplifiers, we honor that. We're not going to dissuade from it. We're not going to require it to be changed, because ultimately it's the author's story, it's not ours.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more to call yourselves amplifiers, because I thought I knew my voice, had my voice, where I was in my comfort zone of my voice. You both bring out a more intentional, clear voice through your editing process. And yes, I found and it's made future reading, or not reading, but writing easier, in terms of now having that inner James and Ashley Elizabeth voice. So as people continue to work with you, that becomes a voice while writing. So you get to have that lifelong gift when you get to write and have you both as editors. So thank you for that. You've touched on this a little bit, and I know that this is probably the touchy-feely part of all of it, but in your experience, what part of writing is emotional and what
Mm.
part is technical? And like, you've touched on it. What I'm gathering is that the technical part is really just kind of the the grammar and the spelling and what have you. But I don't think you guys ever clearly have a difference between it. So I would love to hear from your hearts about that question.
So for the author, all of it is emotional, plain and simple. All of it is emotional because it is, again, their story. For as the amplifier and the editor, there's a reason that my Kleenex box is over halfway empty. Um, we are looking at the technical aspects. We are looking at the grammar and the punctuation and what have you. But as the author, it's your story. It's the emotion that you sit in, and we don't want the grammar and the punctuation having to be perfect, or oh my goodness, your inner English teacher from whatever grade it may be that graded your paper and you knew that paper was worth an eight, goodness, was worth an A. If you didn't get the grade that you knew the paper was worth because someone judged your story, we want that out of the equation because that is why it is such an emotional journey and an emotional experience for an author. And we're not saying that we're not going to fix the little things, the technical aspects, because what we don't want to have happen is we don't want those to get in the way of your reader's experience. We don't want a misspelling, a typo, the wrong punctuation, what have you, to get in the way of the story that you're trying to tell. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me as a reader where I hit a spot where I'm like, oh, that's a misspelling, that's a typo. And it's not that I stop reading, but it stops me in the story for a moment, and then I have to get restarted, right? Um, Same here. For the author, it is all about the emotion. It is all about the journey. It is all about the story. We come in and we help with the technical aspects, but we never want them to feel disconnected from the purpose, the message, the journey, and the emotion of what they've written.
Well, and I think when it comes down to it, when somebody says yes to telling their story, if it is anything less than an emotional yes, it's not going to work, right? If there's not passion and purpose behind why you said yes, then I think that it's going to be missing the mark. And so when I think about what James and I are really trying to do in our editing, in our amplifying, in our writing coaching, when you put all these things together, really what we're trying to do, and James, you hit on it. I can't believe the number of authors who come to us and they're like, well, my teacher said I could never be an author. They said I wasn't a writer. They said whatever. And I feel like over and over we're calling BS on all of this. I'm like, no, no, no. Whoever told you that, they didn't know you. Right.
Yep.
And so like let's lean into the emotion of what are you trying to experience here? I feel like when we are communicating with our authors, we are trying to create space where they can very much sit in their emotion. That's what we want from start to finish, sit in your emotion and let us carry the technical side. We have told authors if all you need to do is sit in the car and talk it out and send us a raw, whatever, voice to text script, if that's how you need to tell your story, then do it. When we go in and make edits and things, we don't comment on every comma that we change or on every capital letter or every time I break something into two paragraphs. I'm not going to do that because my position from start to finish is how to amplify that voice that you're trying to carry. And I don't want any of those emotions to stop because you're worried about whether a comma or a period goes here. Now, there are occasions where we will bring it up to people, some of those technical aspects, but it still is grounded in how we want them to feel. James mentioned earlier, like I always tell people when it comes to the M dash, which has such a negative reputation now because of AI and all those types of things. But it's like, if you're going to use it, that better be your like drama queen of punctuation. Like, you better be wanting people to stop and be like, OMG, like, what is happening right now? Right? Like, that's her function. Right? If we're doing a comma, is this like a speed bump moment for you? Like, do you just want people to be like, oh, okay, I guess I was supposed to pause there a little bit? Or is this like a hard stop where you want them to like pause? Is that your period? Like, we will have those conversations, but if we're bothering to have a technical conversation with you, it's still rooted in emotion. It's still rooted in purpose. It's still rooted in what kind of message you're trying to communicate and how you want your audience to respond to that. So I think it goes back to the fact that clearly James and I are not traditional editors, but we are pulling things out of people that I think are unmatched. And when I think about what James and I are trying to do big picture, is we are building author confidence in their voice. Every single time we have people show up to editing conversations with us, really without fail. I'm struggling to think of an example of somebody who doesn't fit this mold. They show up and they're nervous
Hmm.
because they're ready for their piece to get taken to a chopping block. Their hearts are guarded because they're trying to prepare themselves for what's to come. And by the end of those conversations, almost every single time, again, struggling to think of a time where it wasn't this way, they're like, I feel so convicted. I feel so confident. I understood that like the things that I'm writing mean they mean something, they matter. Somebody is going to want to hear this thing that I have to say. And so I feel like when I capture our editing process and the emotion of it, it's like really we're investing in author confidence. And the more confident they are, which is very clearly an emotion, the more effective their writing is, and they can leave the technical aspects to us.
Exactly.
I love that. So, with this current group with Rising Relentlessly, I am not a part of the editing at all. And it was neat that every couple of days, as you met with the authors, we have a Facebook group chat where we, talk about the process or little reminders, whatever. And it was like trickle every couple of days, like, oh my goodness, I just had my, meeting with Ashley, Elizabeth, and James, and here was my experience. And it was almost like they were encouraging like the ones that had not gone yet. And the first person just set the stage. And I think that she, maybe she didn't have as much fear as everybody else. And she just kind of like calmed everybody down. And then as another one would come in, so by the time the last one came, it was like just all of these words of encouragement, like it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about writing anthologies with a group, a community of people, is that they know they're not alone in what they feel and
Mm,
that they get to share it with each other and they get to be each other's cheerleaders and, confidants and all of the parts of putting a book together. Because more often than none, you get like a bunch of people that don't know each other for a common
mhm,
cause. And they're feeling out their own feelings along with like the thought of being in a book with other people that they don't even know. So I thought that was just a really neat testament to just how relaxed they felt. And with that, so much of this process, and we see it all the time because we'll meet with people and they'll be all in and then they'll just stop. What advice do you have for someone who keeps stopping before they finish? And I've watched this happen so much in this process with this book in particular and with Rooted to Rise. But like, how do they get over that hump? What's your advice?
My advice is just to take it into small chunks. I think so much of the time, when we think about really anything in life that's overwhelming, right? We know that one of our go-to strategies that works for people is to break it down into smaller chunks. I also think when you're approaching something like this and you've given a passionate yes to it, there is a part of you that feels like it's carrying the burden of responsibility that comes with your yes. And you're so convicted about what you're trying to communicate that sometimes that's where I was a little bit talking about earlier about the people who kind of get stuck with it all, in their head, and it's really hard to get it out onto paper. I think giving yourself, just small chunks and even time limits to where you're not trying to communicate everything all at once or everything all in one sitting, I think that's when it gets really overwhelming. But if you can break it down and say, okay, today I'm only going to write this part. I'm only going to tell this part of the story. It's a tiny part of the story. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to set it for 10 minutes. I'm going to set it for 20 minutes, whatever. And I'm going to write the whole time. And I'm going to write the whole time with just showering myself with grace. I will tell people, like, I don't care if you put a period anywhere, ever. Just don't stop. Don't stop writing for that period of time. And I think a lot of times people forget too that, like, yes, there are people who have a talent for writing, but writing is a learned skill and it's something that takes practice. Anybody can be a writer, and I stand by that. Anybody can be a writer. And so these some of these people who are struggling, I feel like one of my go-to things also is like start making time for writing. Even if you have to step away from this piece for a minute, make time for writing. Show up daily and do some writing, do journaling, do whatever. It doesn't even have to go anywhere, but show up and sit yourself in the practice of writing. And when you do that and you can start breaking things down, that's really where you watch people start getting over that hump.
There was a book, a memoir that
Mm,
Shell, you and I recently read, where the author talked about her kind of writing process and her tips of how she writes. And that's not what the book was about. This just happened to be a small section, but it really builds on, Ashley Elizabeth, what you were
mm,
saying. And some suggestions that she had was, one, schedule time to write, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, it doesn't matter. Schedule it and hold that time sacred. So
mhm,
let's say that you set it 15 minutes today, 15 minutes tomorrow, 15 minutes, etc. But then also give yourself grace. Know that if something happens and you're not able to make that 15 minutes, it doesn't mean that you tack it on to the next day and it all of a sudden becomes 30. You stick to the time that you're committing to, because you're committing to yourself, you're committing to your story, you're committing to your words and your chapter and what it is you're trying to convey. And then the next piece of advice that I thought was so brilliant was turn everything off. Turn your phone
mhm,
off, turn the internet off on your computer, shut things down, let people know. If you've got family, let them know, don't interrupt. Turn off all distractions, all interruptions. If you need music, it needs to be music that is just instrumental, not words that's playing in the background, but eliminate all distractions for that period of time. It's part of the commitment that you're making to yourself. And then during that 15 minutes, even if you don't write a single word, you are
mm,
taking that time to think about your story. You're taking that time to outline. You're taking that time to just write down words. You're taking that time to be in your story and you're committing to it. Because one of the worst things, and what something we wouldn't want an author to feel, is frustration with the
mm,
process. And if you sit down for, so it's not about what you write or how much you write during that time. It's about holding that time sacred for the process of writing. And if you write a word, you write a sentence, you write a chapter, or you write an entire book, it's about staying committed to the time that you're making for yourself each and every single day. And I promise you, the words will flow, the words will come, but it's also okay. And Ashley Elizabeth, you put it perfectly. Shower yourself with grace.
mm,
If you only put a period down, you
mhm.
accomplished something. Celebrate it. Celebrate it. You did something, right? Even if you just showed up for yourself for that 15 minutes, celebrate it. But stay committed to that time and establish a pattern that works best for you.
As you can tell, they're both very passionate about everything. I there's no incomplete thought or incomplete process in anything that you guys share. I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions, just three, because I think, part of our mission with Wildly Free is to define storytelling,
Mm,
redefine storytelling, not just limit it to what you read or hear in author groups, on social media, what you hear, on your TikToks and stuff like that, so many people waste a good story
Mm,
on the expectations of others. And
mhm.
we're in expectation-free zone environment. And so I feel like these questions are really going to give you the heart of Wildly Free and give you the heart of the editing team specifically. So, rapid fire, quick responses. What does an editor wish writers knew before they started?
Their words are safe here.
That one word is better than no words.
Mm.
Love that. How do you define success in storytelling versus success in book sales?
To me,
Oh gosh, go. That's hard.
that all comes down to what you're hoping to accomplish telling your story. If you're wanting to tell your story to make money, it's going to look different than if you're wanting to tell your story to share your heart. There is no right or wrong answer. It's just going to be different for you.
Yeah, I think it comes down to impact, right? When we're investing in something, regardless of whether or not it's monetary, right? If we're investing in something, our time, our energy, our heart, whatever, it's looking at impact. And I feel like that's what I would be encouraging people to look at.
Love that. What transformation do you see in clients, not just in their manuscripts, but in their experience as people, the human connection?
Mm. I see them grow in confidence. I feel like every single writer that we've worked with, I've watched them grow in confidence. They are more confident in their story and they're more confident in just, I don't know, the power of everything that they've been through and the purpose of everything that they've been through in a way that is going to be unquantifiable for anybody else, but they grow in their confidence in it.
And for me, it's a question I've always asked our authors, both at the beginning of a call and the end of a call, about how they feel about their chapter.
Mm,
And I give them a scale of 0 to 10, this both at the beginning and at the end. The 0 is, oh my gosh, this is trash, throw it away, burn it. I never want to talk to you again. I'm never touching a pencil, a pen, a word processing document ever again. To a 10 being, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is Pulitzer Prize worthy, winning. If I submitted it now, I know I would win. And inevitably, authors start our calls ranking themselves lower than they actually are. And because Ashley and I always go into it with very few exceptions, we go into it going, this chapter is between a 6 and an 8. Uh,
hmm
that's pretty standard for us. Very few exceptions. Inevitably, the average for our authors is they go into it thinking it's about a 4 to a 5.
hmm
So we hope that through our editing call and our conversations and our coaching, that they come to see the chapter just the way that we see it as well. And I want to add one more thing to it too. They say there's your perception of something, there's my perception of something, and then there's actually something, right? So there's how you think it happened, how I think it happened, how it actually happened. Same way with your story too, right? There's how you think it happened, there's how your reader is going to read it, and then there's actually like what your story is. It's like we're all going to connect to a story in different ways. The way that Rachelle, as the author, wrote her story and felt about her story was probably different from the way I experienced it. It was different from the way that Ashley Elizabeth experienced it too. So as an author, it's acknowledging and knowing that your story matters to you and it's going to matter to your readers in different ways.
Beautiful. One last question for you both, and I did not give you this ahead of time, so haha, because they like to be prepared. Share from your heart. This isn't even a question. Share from your heart what it has been like to work with the authors from Rising Relentlessly, please.
It has been so empowering working with them and so inspiring. What many people don't know, and I know there's going to be a later podcast that I'm hoping everybody's going to watch that will be with Amy Hicks, who's the one that designed our cover and came up with all of these things. But we had a meeting where we talked about the energy that this group has brought with us. I mean, Rachelle, you as the curator, James and I, as the editors, I mean, we talk all the time about the kind of energy that this group is bringing, and in their editing calls, it has been so consistent. I love the title of our book. That has been what it's been like to work with these people. They are rising relentlessly. And it has been really, really beautiful to watch that and to feel the inspiration and the empowerment myself from just sitting in these spaces with them.
And I would add to that, in this, it struck me in the first book as well, Rooted to Rise, and I'm seeing it here as well. We don't allow, or sorry, we don't allow, that's not quite right. We discourage our authors from reading each
Mm,
other's chapters. They have
mhm,
access to them. They could find them in the drive. They could read them too, but we discourage them from reading each other's chapters until they've gone through the praise and polish process with us and the amplification process. Consistently, I see the same themes. These are women and men, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, different stories, different experiences, different ages, different professions, different families, different everything. But the struggles that they have gone through, the themes that they write about are so incredibly similar.
mm,
And it allows the authors, the editors, the readers, the publishers, the curator to connect, because we're living our lives to the best that we possibly can. We all have very similar struggles, and knowing that there is someone out there that is going through the same crap that you are is a very empowering experience. Whether as whether we're on our coaching calls and we're asking questions and we're saying, "Oh, I remember when this happened, such and such," whether it's like that, whether it's comments from beta or alpha readers or reviewers, it the you hear it consistently, especially when it comes to memoirs, which is kind of what these kind of are. They're the memoirs, the short versions of them, right? Um, you're not alone.
mm.
That's such a powerful message for our authors, is that they are not alone with what they're going through, no matter how much they feel that they are.
What invitation would you extend to people listening to write with Wildly Free and with go through the editing process and the essentially writing process and editing process with you? What invitation would you like to create?
Tell your story.
Tell your
Period.
story.
That's it. Just tell it. Whether it's with us, whether it's in a book, a podcast, on the stage in front of thousands, or in front of your family, just tell it.
Hmm. And I would say that there's nothing you can lose by coming and starting a conversation with us. There's just nothing. So if you're on the fence and you feel like there's a tug on your heart, you're like, oh gosh, I wonder if they're talking to me. That answer's yes. We're absolutely 100% talking to you because your voice matters and your story matters. And so we need you to come here with us so that you can tell your story.
Exactly. There's someone I follow, or actually, I don't necessarily follow this person, but we're in a group on Facebook together. Never met them, never had a conversation with them one to one, but I started following them because they started sharing stories on Facebook of a very, very difficult, very, very dark time, something that is incredibly brave for them to share,
Mm,
being so public about it. And their reasoning for being so public about it is so that people out there know that they're not by themselves. And I don't know if I could do the same thing if I was in this person's shoes in terms of how public they're being with the story that they're sharing, but it's just so incredibly empowering and powerful to tell your story, have it heard, and know that it's making an impact somewhere. this person doesn't know that's making an impact on me.
Hmm.
They don't need to know that. Same way with what Rachelle wrote in Expiration Date Unknown. Same with what Ashley Elizabeth wrote in Rooted to Rise. Same with what we're writing in Rising Relentlessly. It is going to touch people, and I'm sorry, my light is changing. It is going to touch people that we don't know, and that's part of the magic of it.
Well, I'm excited to do a separate podcast with both of you because not only are you the editors and writing coaches of this amazing book, but you also said yes to your own stories. And I'm excited because this will be the second one for Ashley Elizabeth and the first one for James. And so it's you have your own personal journey. So I'm very excited. So look forward to listening to their own podcast. And we're just so grateful for you listening and really diving into understanding who these two amazing individuals are as editors. So thank you so much for listening.